Hello, everybody. Welcome to Circuit and Gear, a podcast where we discuss scenic automation and other interesting tech. Now, for the first time ever, we're doing both an audio and a video podcast. So we got a lot of stuff to show you. If you're listening to the audio feed, I'd highly recommend that you go check out our YouTube channel and see what we're talking about at the same time. I'm Gareth Connor.
And I'm Christian Bassey.
And today what we're going to do with this little video experiment is show you Spikemark 5. Christian.
It's been a long year of development.
It's been a long year of development. There's been a lot of work. You've been working on it for a ton. I came in it kind of at the end and chipped in. And huge changes. And you said like, hey, I want to do a podcast about it. And
I also want to show it off. So
you've done a lot of work to set this up for video. And what better way to kick this off? It's also kind of a great experiment for us to figure out how much interest there is in kind of seeing things. We've done some scripted video work. Also interested to see if people are interested in some unscripted video work, having us show you kind of more off the cuff stuff that we're working on. So anyway, what this video is really an introduction into Spikemark and us chatting about cool Spikemark things that we want to show you. It's not really in-depth training. There is more of that stuff coming. Mike's working on some great actual training videos for Spikemark, but this is more us kind of riffing on like what's cool and new, what we liked, and just enthusiastically showing you.
Right, and a little bit of the story behind how it came to be.
Right.
Because there's some stories.
There's a couple 2-3 stories. Yeah, so like I guess one of the first questions here, Christian, is why do we make Spikemark 5? What was wrong with Spikemark 4?
Right, and with the Q grid that's been around for several years now at this point.
Yeah, like 13.
Yeah. So there's a couple pain points I think we started to encounter.
Yeah.
Specifically, when you started getting a larger show and with a lot of motors, one of the things you would run into is you'd have to do a lot of back and forth horizontal scrolling.
Oh, yeah.
Because
you could get everything. Maybe like 12 to 15 motors on screen before they kind of just fell off the right-hand side, very dragon style.
Yeah, and then you weren't ever sure what that motor specifically was doing. Yeah,
that was actually pretty suspicious. Like you could not, if you had a big show, well, you really just couldn't. You just couldn't have too many motors on there because even with an extra wide monitor, you could get maybe 24 motors on there. And then beyond that, you have cues written for motors that you can't see on screen. And that's no good.
Right. And our answer had always just been just get a bigger screen.
Yeah. But staring down the barrel of 100 axes that we were putting into a theater, no screen big enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think the other thing that you ran into also, right?
Right. Going along with that, though, is memory issues.
Yeah.
So Spikemark 4 uses a lot of memory.
Yeah.
That it doesn't necessarily need to.
Yeah, and again, going back to that Q grid, right? Like the Q grid was the thing that was sucking up the memory.
Right, because the way it worked was when you loaded the show file, it loaded everything into memory and it drew all of the on-screen elements, even though you couldn't see them.
Right. And so if you had like cues stacked up kind of virtually in your head, like you got Q 1 through 600, and you could only see Q 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on screen. But what was really happening, right, was that everything below there was in memory, just not seen.
Was still there, yeah. And so during the exploratory phase of what are we going to do, I tried doing a memory profile to see how much memory we were actually using.
Oh, yeah. What was that answer?
So in the middle of the test, my computer ran out of memory and it crashed. So a little bit.
Yeah. Unknowable.
Yeah.
More than that.
Yeah.
And that was the Q grid was not to get too geeky about it, but like we write it all in WPF, like all the UI stuff is in WPF, Windows Presentation Framework. And that Q grid was a custom UI element that I wrote way back in the day, like 2007, 2008.
Which is pretty impressive because that stuff's not easy.
But I didn't do a great job of memory management, as it turns out. Like, it wasn't virtualized. Like, that's the big thing that we were really needing.
Running
right?
into, yeah.
And so in Spikemark 5, we now use some of the built-in controls instead, and those are virtualized, so they do a much better job of memory management than my caveman style. So, and I think the other thing I wanted to mention at this point too is like, even once you can see 100 motors on screen.
Oh, right.
Like, how do you find them, right? Like, because you have 100 motors on screen now, but you can't really look at 100 motors all at once and kind of process what's going on with them, like which one's got a limit switch and which one's, at position 20 and all those things. So there's another element to this where you really need to provide tools to the operator to be able to limit down to what you want to see at that point. Like, are you just looking at the downstage deck tracks? Are you looking at the flies? Are you looking at whatever it is, the turntable, but some way so that at the right time, as the operator, you can drill down and only see the things you want to see, and then kind of pop back up and see the whole world again, and then drill down and pop out, and drill down and pop out. And
be able to do it easily and intuitively.
Right. So there's a whole bunch of cool like filter and tagging stuff that we built into
to help that.
5. Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of like enough background, and people have heard us blather about that before on our last podcast episode. So it probably makes sense. Like, let's just get into it and show it off, right?
Yeah, let's jump in.
All right. So you do the magic voodoo that you do.
Can,
boom.
There we are.
All right. So we're now looking like at Spikemark 5. And I think this is the first time that probably most people will have seen this. If you're not one of the special few customers that are already running it and don't work in the company, this is your first look, right?
Yeah.
So let me just give a quick overview, and please jump in and we'll just kind of riff on this, like what we're looking at. So some of this is the same. A lot of this is pretty different. When you first open up,
stuff repackaged,
right, reformatted, with some new tricks too.
Yeah.
So up top, you've got your model view, which that's kind of a holdover from Spikemark 4, but now split into 3 panes. These panes are all resizable, so you can do you can set it up however you like.
Right. You can totally remove them if you want to go back to just having one.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. So if I double click on a splitter bar, I go back to
now it's Spikemark 4.
Now it's Spikemark 4 view. Let me put those back out there. And you can still zoom with your scroll bar. And then you built this cool.
Yeah, that was kind of cool. New 3D model spinner thing.
Yeah, kind of like it's like the orbit control from Fusion or AutoCAD, which is pretty neat. And then it's got the same light up faces, so you can like do your quick select.
Yeah, so you can still get to the specific view you wanted fast.
And home takes you back to like an ISO. Here, I'm just gonna dump out one side here, and then
it's also got the little caret. Yeah, so if you wanted to
go to top, yeah, cool. So that's kind of our 3D view. On the right hand side here, right now, this is just a blank show file, so there's no Showstopper 4 stuff in here, but Showstopper 4s would show up in the status, right?
Yeah, and that's pretty cool stuff where...
tell me a little bit about that. What would
now
be there?
You can know, with Showstopper 4, now you can know which E-stop button is hit in your theater. So if you have them spread out, permanent install style, or you just have a lot of remote buttons laying around...
Yeah.
You can now specifically know which one was hit.
That's super cool.
So you can quickly find it and go see what the problem was.
And we'll explore like what a trio like that looks like when we open up a big show file.
Yeah.
And then we get down to the below it. What used to be the Q grid is now this is now separated by different workspaces. So we're in the jogging workspace you can see up top, and this is where your motors will show up. And we got one motor on screen. If I click on it, you can see if I hover over, you get the nice little hover highlighting that you built, which is super cool. If I click on it, everything kind of jumps to life. On the right-hand side is our old properties pane, and that's mostly all still the same. We've moved some cheese in there.
Simplified it a little bit.
Yeah. But so know that it's here, but I'm going to double-click and just hide it, because actually much of the time you don't really need it anymore.
Right.
So,
We designed a whole new way to be able to interact with that stuff.
Yeah. And then once I've selected something here, it pops up in this axis dashboard. And this is maybe doesn't make a whole ton of sense when we're looking at just like one motor, because you're like, here's a motor here and here's a motor here. But anything that's selected is in the dashboard. And if I deselect it, it comes out of the dashboard.
Right. So it gives you an idea that anything in the dashboard is things I am currently editing or things that are going to move.
Right, when I jog them. So I think without further ado, let's just get a bigger
show.
Yeah, right? Let me open up.
Be able to really show off some of this.
Totally. So I'm going to open up a thing called Big Show, which is, this has got quite a few motors in it. I'm not sure what the count is, but it's got a lot. So we look around here. We got a bunch of line sets in it, and we got some horizontal panels. We got some lifts. We got things in here.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and back up to the showstopper status bar since we're here. So we've got like some basement levels that have got some showstoppers in them. So this is a hierarchy, right?
And it's completely customizable, so you can add things indefinitely inside of each other, so you can really keep it organized the way you want. And then so right now they're all showing up as gray because they're not plugged in.
Right, because we're in simulator mode instead of live.
Right.
Yep.
And
we're not connected.
And we're
to
not
those
connected to them.
Because I guess actually even in simulator mode,
yeah,
they would show up if we had them.
Yeah. But so when they are safe, not engaged, they are a green. And then when they are engaged, they're red. And the nice thing is that that propagates up the tree. So now that it's all collapsed, as you can see, the roaming or the B1 or whatever would still show the status if.
Gotcha. So if I had, I just expanded it. If I had like the operator station under roaming, if that had a red light, then roaming would also show a red light. So it would show me that something underneath there is.
Yeah. So you can, again, quickly find the button and go fix the problem.
All right. That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and close up our model view a little bit so we can see more of the motors here, just so we can get a sense for how big this is. So we got 57 motors, it looks like. But you can see they easily fit even on a laptop screen.
Right. And then like easy to find them. You can no scrolling required.
So I'm just going to select a couple of things so we can show off the Axis dashboard a little bit. And actually maybe not that I want to like fidget with my 3D views all day, but get a little bit of something here so we can see it when we jog some things. So I'm going to grab just a couple of line sets. And I think one of the coolest things that now in the jog screen is you can select multiple things at once. So if I want to grab a few line sets here randomly, I've just been holding down the control key and clicking on these things, but then you can also
use the fancy little circle.
The little circle, if you click inside that also adds
it to the selection.
And similarly, it'll take it away from the selection if you click inside that circle.
Yeah.
So you can do kind of normal selection, or what I consider to be normal selection, like a control clicking or shift clicking. So shift clicking would give you a range. Control clicking adds non-contiguous ones, right? But anyway, so now those all show up in the dashboard. And let's walk through just left to right. What's available to us once things are in the dashboard?
Yeah, and I think this also starts illustrating another new key point now is you can now edit settings, these quick settings here, for multiple axes at the same time.
Which is super cool.
Especially for when you're trying to get things set up.
Yeah. So I can... In the identification, I could add tags, and we'll talk more about tags in a bit. I could connect and disconnect to them. I can set here's a good one, right? So if I wanted to, if these things these are all line sets, and maybe they all have the same max forward trim, I can set that here and go to like 400 as my max trim. And now
it's for all of them.
Everything that's been selected, boom.
It's now at 400.
That's pretty sweet.
And you'll notice the varies that shows up to tell you that things you have selected currently don't have the same values.
Oh, that's a good point. Because network, for instance, you're not going to want these things to all have the same network address. That would be bad. And you probably don't want them to all have the same name either, right?
Right.
And so those things just show you as varies, but you can also change it, right? Like, so if I wanted to change my max speed on all of these at once, right, I could dumb that down to be like 6 inches per second or 7 inches per 8, because that's what I typed. Fat fingered 8 in there. And now they're all max speed of 8 inches per second, right?
Yeah, and that's another cool check you can do is if these are all supposed to be going the same speed, does it say varies? Well, then somebody's wrong.
Yeah. So, and then super, super cool, right? I can, with these things selected, so I've got 6 motors here, and it shows me 6 motors are on local control. I can just grab them and jog.
Yeah. Now jogging 6 things.
Now
all at once.
All at once.
No cues.
Right. Which is pretty dope. So if you've used Spikemark 4 or 3 or 2, you'll know that you used to only be able to select one motor at a time. And if you want it, so you could only jog one motor at a time. And if you wanted to move multiple motors at the same time, you really had to write a cue, like you said.
Yep. And with this, or you had to go like to the faceplate and use both hands, and you were limited to 2, and so.
Right. And so this is crazy cool, right? Like, and this show, I don't think actually has any groups set up in it at the moment, but it's pretty cool how well jogging works now with multiple different heterogeneous types. So you can have, in this case, we have just 6 independent line sets. But if you had grouped motors, previously, if you wanted to select and jog a subset of a group,
you had to deactivate all the other ones, and then you could jog the group.
Yeah.
That's not the case anymore. It's a little bit simpler now.
Right. Now you can just
select what you want.
Just select what you want. And we might as well just set that up, right?
Yeah, I think that's really cool to see.
Yeah.
Because it also shows, because now you can also jog a group with another line set, say. So if you had a group of chain motors lifting a truss or something, and then also you wanted to not have the line set in the group, but you wanted to move the line set with the group for whatever reason, you can now also do that without having to write a cue.
Right. So I'm just going to call this grouped line sets. And we'll put a bunch of these line sets that we have in this group. Boop, boop, boop. Okay, so now those are grouped, and now we can see also how groups show up, right? So you have this group shows up with kind of a header bar across it. And if I wanted to jog the group, same as ever, like I can jog the entire group at once.
That's not regular old good old group jog.
Right. And if I zoom in here, I'll get a little closer. Select my group again. And now we can see that all of those line sets are moving, right?
Yep, just like we would expect.
And now I can just grab a couple of the line sets, like say I wanted to adjust the trim between them for some reason, and I can just jog those. And those will go into grouped jogging mode, which instead of sending just a 0 to 100% command signal, actually sends a synchronous velocity that they all have to match.
And still protects it with default monitoring.
Right.
Here's some information.
Oh, thanks, Siri. That's my watch piping up. Perfect. And then the also very cool, like you were alluding to, I can select a couple of things outside of the group. And now these things, they show up here that I've got in local control. I got 2 singles and then 3 from a group. So that means that everything now is going to go into that kind of velocity jog mode, where instead of just sending a 0 to 100% command signal, they're all going to be moving at a velocity that's a percentage of their full. So if they have the same maximum speed set, and now I can just quickly double check that they are. I mean,
It doesn't say varies, and we set it to 8, and so,
And now those things are all going to move together, and you can kind of see them there in our 3D view. Let me make that a little bigger so we can see our 3D view better.
Right, and it's a subtle concept. The difference there is, but it's now running like you were saying, as a speed as opposed to a percent of just full.
Right.
Whatever that is for the drive.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. And then I can also, so that's jogging. And, and that works. We've been using it on screen so you can show you, but that works obviously on your joystick for your showstopper consolette or, if you're using 3 or 4 showstopper consolette.
Right.
And then I can also send everything to a position, right?
Yeah. Move to position, which before in Spikemark 4, again, it was kind of a buried feature, and you could, again, only do one axis at a time.
Right.
But similar to Jog now, you can select whatever you want and run it in a ad hoc queue, essentially.
Exactly. So I'm going to bring them all to 100 inches, and they're all starting from, some of them are starting from 81, some of them are starting from 31. They're all loaded to go, and they can just run. And like you said, this is basically like having a queue, but you don't have to go through all the rigmarole
of writing the queue, adding the motors, setting the speeds and the positions to all be same or.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's great for being able to quickly move things to a known position. Like, you want to bring in all your line sets to a working height or something, or.
Yeah.
Any number of things.
And I could do a...
Oh, right. Now also you can... So the spikes you have that are common among all the things selected, so that means they have the same exact names and they have the same exact positions, will show up in the spikes column there in the quick properties, and you can load that right in to the move to position.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Right. So like you said, if they're shared spikes, you can use those as move to position targets as well without having to write a queue and do all that.
Right. So if you set so all your line sets have a working height.
Yeah.
Spike, for example.
That's so dope.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And then lastly here, brand new panel called load cell, which right now has got the, hey, I don't know what guy, because we aren't connected to any load cells, but
one of the big things we've added is now integrated load cells into Spikemark. So we can read in 4 to 20 milliamp signals on our stagehand cards, on our new stagehand cards.
Right.
And we can now show load cell information.
And so you'll see like individual motors will show up their current load cell if they've got load cells equipped. And then groups, what do groups show?
Groups, in the properties pane, it shows the total weight.
Total weight, which is pretty sweet. And then you can also set alarms, right? You can set underweight and overweight alarms that will stop motion.
Yep. And that way you can, if it gets hung up or if
it's overloaded,
it'll stop.
Yeah.
And that's all configurable. So
that's so sweet.
Yeah.
So to clear the selection that I've got in the dashboard, I can either like click in an unused area or click on a new motor, or I can hit the clear selection button as well.
And also the escape key.
And the escape key. There you go.
Because during development, I kept hitting that button because that usually deselects whatever I'm using while I'm programming.
Yep.
And then I kept trying to do that in Spikemark to unselect the motors. So
yeah.
That's why that's there.
Nice.
It was for me.
It's a quality of life things. So let's talk quickly about tags. So tags, so we see all of our motors here, and I've shrunk up my 3D view just so we can see all the cards for each motor. You can assign tags to any number of motors, and every motor can have multiple tags, as many as you want. And so here, if I select my line sets tag, I'm showing only ones that have the line sets. If I'm looking for the theater doors, I can click on that, and it shows me the inner door and the outer door. Lifts, we only have one lift in this show at the moment, so that just shows me that.
The one. Mm-hmm.
All my 7.5 horsepower line sets have a separate tag for them, so you can see here they've got the orange tag for 7.5 horsepower, but then also the blue tag for line sets.
Because they are a line set, they just go faster. Yeah.
Right.
So depending on how you want to see it.
And so my front of house, I can see all my front of house stuff, which has got something called clouds, and then also my front of house electric. And when I select those tags, I still see the other motors in my 3D view,
Right.
but they're kind of grayed out, showing me that, like, yeah, there's more stuff to see if you wanted to, but you are limited down to what you're tagged.
Right. And you can still select the other stuff in the model view. You can still select the grayed out stuff.
Grab it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this way, it's focusing you on the thing you're trying to see.
Right. And if I Control A, that selects everything that's tagged, that's visible through my tag selection,
right.
which is a really handy way to like grab everything here, for instance, and then just run it up or down.
And then actually, that also showed off a new cool thing too, is now when you go past your soft limits.
Right. Which you're allowed to do in jogging.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yep.
It now shows as yellow like it does on the pendant. We made that change to the pendant a while ago, and now brought it into Spikemark as well.
And that's that yellow. So you don't, a red would be an actual physical limit switch struck, and yellow showing you like, hey, you've gone into your danger zone. What you told us was your danger zone. You're allowed to do it, but just a heads up.
Yeah.
And then adding tags so if I go back to my all tag, which just shows me everything, and I hit escape to deselect my stuff. If I wanted to, let's see here, like if I decided that FOHLX is actually a 7.5 horsepower
line set.
Yeah.
Or just 7.5 horse.
I can select it. It's in my dashboard, select my tag, and then move the tag into its assigned. And now we've got FOH line LX.
There it is.
With the line sets.
Yep.
Super cool. And you can set your, you can edit the tag. That's what I'm trying to say.
You can pick any color you want. You can pick any name you want. You can have as many of them as you want.
Yep. And then when you select multiple tags, which you can do by either control clicking or shift clicking to select a range, it's additive. So, which is a conscientious choice that we made. Like that, I think more often than not, people are, rather than trying to like drill more tightly in,
you want to see more.
Right.
Yeah. I want to see
my 7.5 and my FOH and my lifts.
Right.
And so you can select all of those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So I'll go back to my all tag.
Then another thing up here. And you spent most, there's a whole nother story that we'll get to in a second.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing to point out here too is, so that's tagging. But then I think the other thing to show off here is the filters.
Right.
Which, I don't know, you worked a lot on. So do you want to...
Yeah. And I worked a bit on the tagging too. And
then the whole UI for that.
Yeah. But so filters just allow you to kind of narrow down things that, honestly, it's like things that are having problems, or how I like to think of filters, or just things that are currently running. Right. So like things that are disconnected. So if I filter to things that are disconnected, we're in simulator, everything is connected, so I get nothing. But if you were trying to find that one annoying motor that has dropped off the network, you can filter down to just show me the disconnected one.
Right.
Or disconnected ones, right, if it's more than one. Similarly, you could say, just show me the inactive ones.
And I think this one is super helpful too.
I totally agree.
Deactivated it for maintenance or for whatever.
Right. And now you're just trying to find it again to maybe reactivate it, which of course I could hit Control A to select all of my inactive ones, and then I can activate them again. That didn't actually change them all to active though. It's not released yet. So that one just gave us the first one of that active set. But I could also look for ones that are faulted, which we currently have none that are faulted.
Because we're in simulator. Yeah. I could look for any ones that have a queue loaded, which is currently none, but we can see those in queue view. I could also see all my idles. Anyway, and then you can also do things that are like all my ones that are connected and faulted. Or faulted, I'm sorry. Right. And again, like the tags, like you were saying, it's consciously additive.
Right, exactly. So that's filters. And you can kind of use filters and tags together to drill down and find the motors that you're looking for. And then there's also just a search. So If I was looking for that FOH line set, I can type in FOH, and again, it finds me that. If I'm looking for a line set, I could erroneously just type line set, and I'm like, oh God, there's so many line sets.
There's a lot of those, yeah.
Line sets with a 1 in them, and here we go, all the ones that have a 1 in them. So it's, all of those guys as well. So.
Yeah, and then so I had initially mocked everything up in Spikemark as we were doing our tests, and I had put the filter bar above the 3D model view.
Right. So it was above here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was the layout was still the tabs that you'll remember from Spikemark 4, and so I had just put
there's tabs.
We still had tabs.
Yeah.
And so I had just put the filter bar above that because you still want to be able to use your filters in the Q workspace, which we'll get to more in a second.
Yep.
And then Gareth finally had some time to start being able to dig into some of this too.
Right, because we've basically gotten through the physical production of this giant job, and we're down to software.
Just finishing up the software. Yeah. And
I was like, I'll do the filter bar.
Yeah. And I believe your initial estimate was like, and I'll have this done by the end of the week or something.
That sounds right. That sounds right. That sounds like me.
And then that turned into something, didn't it?
Yeah, that turned into quite a thing. Yeah, so we had the tabs across the top, and the filter bar was right next to the tabs or something. And I was like, I really want the filter bar to be not so far away from the things that you are filtering, because it's always filtering the motors down here. So it feels better for me if they're down closer. And that caused me to look at some of the UI code, and I'm like, well, the other thing that bugs me about this is that on each tab at that point, we had the models views replicated.
Right.
And I was like, but they're really
not right either.
Yeah, that they really are the same models. So why would we have 2 instances of them? It's really just swapping out the content pane below. And then I got into and I was like, well, the structure of that's kind of wrong. And then I was like, actually though, I'm not sure I like how
the tabs look.
I want to go to let's get rid of the tabs and do this drop down menu. And then that turned into just a whole thing. Because then we ended up refactoring a ton of the UI. Because it also turned out that we had a lot of code kind of structured a little suboptimally.
Right.
And yeah.
And so that
was 8 weeks.
Moving the filter bar turned into a refactoring all of the UI code.
We refactored all the UI code.
Yeah.
At that point, right?
Yeah.
Because for any super geeky programmers out there, we decided that at that point too, we had sporadically used the MVVM pattern, the model view model pattern, which is especially because I started writing in WPF, against the WPF framework before it was officially released. So in 2008, it was still beta.
Yeah.
And so the best practices hadn't really quite come to light. And
Yeah.
And the MVVM pattern kind of developed over that time, which is now a really popular pattern to use, in React and Swift UI,
right?
And, all of those things. So, so we were and I remember it was maybe over a night or a weekend that we're let's just think about this,
right? And
do a little prototyping and some reading, and just we came back.
Do we want to make this change?
Because it's a big investment if we do this, but I think it's gonna be a lot cleaner. Blah blah blah. We came back.
We have used it in a couple other places prior to that, and it was pretty great.
It was pretty great, right? But it was this is gonna touch everything.
Yeah,
and we did. We touched everything.
So.
Yeah. But it's better.
It is way better, way more maintainable.
But now the tab bar is in the right, or the filter bar is in the right place. So
I'm just gonna move that filter bar real quick.
Let me just move that filter bar real quick. 8 weeks later, but then we were also and that turned into synchronizing multiple collection sets and everything.
Yeah.
It was.
But ultimately, that did end up letting us both work on the Spikemark UI at the same time.
Yep.
Because had we not made that change, this was all in main, essentially.
Main window had an awful lot of the UI code. Not the back end code. The back end code's all very well factored, but the UI was getting a little spaghetti-ish. So much better now.
Yes.
All right, let's let's just check our little list here. Tags. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's go to Q mode.
Yeah.
Right.
The other big mode here.
So we switch it to Q mode just by that workspace flipperoo up top.
And also for the keyboard users out there, you can switch between them with F. The Mac doesn't have an F key. 9, 10, and 11. F9 to Qs, F10 to jog mode, and F11.
F11 goes into presets.
To presets.
All right, so back to Q mode. So F9.
Yeah.
Sweet. There are a lot of keyboard shortcuts now, which is awesome. So Q mode. So here we've got some cues like already put together. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go ahead and close out my showstopper status just so we can see these things.
And so you might notice it looks a little different than the cue grid.
It does look a little different than the cue grid.
It's kind of split up into two sections. Down the left-hand side, you have all of the axes in the show, and whether that's motors, motor groups, Modbus, UDP, OSC, FXs, they all exist there. And then over in the right-hand side are your cues. And they now, instead of extending horizontally, they now extend vertically. So the taller your cue, the more things you have in it.
Right. And so movements, rather than showing like that kind of empty add button in the old cue grid, it just, the axis is not present in a cue at all.
Right.
So like you said, this is great because you really see kind of like what your big cues are just by how much vertical height they take up. And if you, of course, you can get rid of your model view if you want, which we'll bring back in a second, to see more cues at once. But this is what you get a real quick visual about like, hey, Q4 doesn't have much going on. Q5 doesn't have much going on. Q3's got a little bit more, et cetera. But those first couple of cues are huge. They've got lots of things in them. Mm-hmm. So what do I do if I want to add? Previously, if I wanted to add a motor into the queue, I had all my motors as like headers of the columns, and I just click a little plus button. How do I get a motor into this queue?
Now, very modern-y, but it is, you can drag and drop.
So if I drag like lines at 30
and drop
over,
it in.
Boom, there. And if I wanted to drag like a few of them.
Yep, you can still use your shift and drag.
Shift and drag, boom.
And if you try and add the same thing that already exists, it'll let you know, so.
All right, so let's just test that theory out. So I drag, I let go of my shift key. You do have to hold your shift key down through the whole operation.
Right, to make the drag work.
Boom, 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 boom.
So you can't add it twice.
Can't add it twice.
Which is helpful.
Which is great. And so now, other thing I think is a really cool design decision that is here, and we should give credit here to Cody as well, who did an awful lot.
Oh yeah, he did a lot of the mock-up. In Adobe, yeah.
XD, right?
XD, yep,
yeah. He did a lot of this UI work of like designing what the look and feel would be.
Yeah.
I think one of the cool things about this is that it's no longer. It feels a lot more optimized for running the show in the sense that we know that you're going to run the show more often than you're going to write the show. And in Spikemark 4, you had all of these live editable boxes everywhere.
Right.
And now you really see this kind of read-only view most of the time. And if I wanted to edit something, and you can see my little highlight there as I'm mousing over, I click on it, and I get it popped up with a little editor.
Right. And now this is also if you make some changes and you decide you don't want to keep them.
Yeah, so
you're not locked into them.
I'm going to muck this up. I'm going to put in a bunch of data I don't want. And then I can hit escape or cancel.
Right. And it won't change it on you.
That's pretty sweet.
And then it also can use the arrow keys to switch between which movement. So, and then if you keep going up a little bit there, you can see the box will go with you, so you know what one you're editing. But then it won't disappear off the screen.
And I love how if I get to the bottom, it just cycles through.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna yeah, like if I hold my arrow key down, I mean, I don't know why you would do that, but I just think it's fun. And then if I'm here and I want to start editing, my target, you can see my cursor is already highlighted there. Actually, now I want to go down to one of these new ones I just added. So I'm going to go to 100 and I can tab and I can set the speed here to be like 4 and ACEL's 2 is fine. And if I'm done, but I want to I'm done with this, I want to go on to the next one because I have a whole list here that I need to edit. What do I do?
And so if you want to save it, you can hit Shift and Enter, and that will update and take you to the next one.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
And then my tab and Shift tab all work within this little editor. So again, I'm going to go to 100, and this one I'm going to do it like 6. Okay, and I'm good with that. So I Shift Enter again. These all look good. I'll do 12. I'm just making up numbers here. 222, so 90. Anyway, you get the point. Very quick to edit.
Right. And you can also, if you tab down onto the update, you can also do Shift Enter there. Will also take you to the next one.
Okay. And if I just hit Enter, what?
It will update it and close it.
Update and close. Cool.
Yeah.
And that's editing, like super easy. Now, if I'm in a whole queue, so we saw like how we can edit individual movements, and that's super sweet.
Yep.
And then we'll get to spikes in a bit because spikes have gotten cooler. But your spike list is here, and I can add a spike, I can delete a spike, all that stuff. If I want to get out of this, I can hit Escape.
Yep.
But if I want to edit something like on the queue, like so, this would like here I got my total time and my ramp time, right? So I can
change those for the individual access.
Right, 45 seconds. If it can do it, which it can't quite, 47.3 is its closest. So I'll go to 48 seconds, Shift Enter, Escape. But what if I want to make the whole queue take like 90 seconds, which I used to be able to do in the left-hand gutter.
So now that moved to the little pencil floating icon. Okay, if you click on that, this opens up the...
Oh, don't right-click on it, though.
Yeah, left
trackpad.
Yeah. This opens up the queue editing. And so you have a couple options here. So you can do your queue number if you want to change that. You can change the description like you always used to be able to. You can now...
My queue...
Also,
not yours. Okay. Yep.
You can also now change the color of the queue.
Oh, Ken Berg's gonna be so happy.
To anything you want.
What? So I can make this like let's not make it red. I can make it like my pink queue.
There you go. And if those preset colors aren't enough for you, you can even open up the color wheel there.
Oh, look,
you can really have whatever you want now.
This is a judgment-free zone. You can do any color you like. And I can save it as my custom color. Boom, boop.
There you go.
Boop. They do work a little bit better with slightly lighter colors, I'll say, just because then they...
you can still see that.
You see the text, right? Because the text is still black.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
But answering your original question before we got sidetracked with the fancy color changing.
What color is the spike shed going to be?
But now here's where you have your queue ramp time and your queue total time, which adjust it for all of your movements in the queue.
And same thing, I have to hit
to save.
Yeah.
That was something we were trying to work towards is it's not all live. You have to make the choice to want it.
Got it.
So if you don't errantly change something.
Very cool. So I dig all of those things.
And then I think the other thing is it now also, specifically for your movements, now start to read like a sentence.
Yeah.
So it doesn't just look like a sea of numbers at you. If you start reading left to right, row by row, line set 1 tracks reverse from 400 inches to 36.75 inches in 80 seconds at the speed. Was that 4.7, 47?
4.7, yeah. 4.7 inches per second, right. Yeah. And so that from is looking back to Q1, right? That's how it...
Right, in this instance, but it's really to whatever the last Q that motor was in.
Got it. So if I look, I think it's a good example of this, right? So Q2, bloop, 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 bloop. If I look at Q5, that's got line set 1, and there it's tracking forward from 36.75, which it wasn't in Q4, it wasn't in Q3, it was in Q2. So it
Right.
knows that the last time it moved was in Q2, and the position it was going to was 36.75. Now it's going to go to 400. It's going to do it in 59 seconds at a speed of 6.5 inches per second.
Right. And the thing we didn't want to lose from the Q grid was being able to see where the motor was going, because before you could just look down the column and you would see what the last position it was coming from was.
Right. And so now instead of since you don't have that kind of visual reference anymore, we lay it out there in the sentence. But I love this kind of sentence structure. So I kind of think of like each movement as a sentence, and then the whole cue is like a paragraph. And I think that's
and it
really
makes
powerful.
sense and it's easy to quickly digest.
Totally. All right, so I'm going to run a cue because I just can't contain myself.
Yeah, that's also pretty cool.
So now if I load up a cue, everything that's going to move gives our normal highlighting of red there, and the positions they're going to move to show up as their little, I like call them like ghosts.
Yeah.
The little ghosts up there.
And also, I want to point out before you run it is,
if
you'll notice the pulsing of the red around the cue when it's loaded, which
which
matches the consolette a little bit there.
Absolutely. That's right. It does totally match. And it's even better than consolette because it can change color.
That's true.
All right, so I'm loaded. I'm going to go ahead and run it. Where's my run button?
It's still where it used to be, a little different style, but...
So it's over there. You can, of course, use your consolette as always, or you can use your cues menu to run your cue, which is also F5.
And the little pop-up also still exists.
When you say pop-up?
So window...
Window
Cue Control.
Oh, and I went to Stagehand Properties.
That also still exists, though. So
Cue Control. So let's go ahead and put that out there because I think you're right. That's a better way to do this. And as I run,
you will now notice that it tracks left to right with its progress. Each individual one has a progress bar.
So you can get a real quick visual indication here of like how close am I to being done with this cue, and how close is that specific motor to being done with its cue, and they transition to their completed cue colors. Which is super cool.
It is really cool.
And now here I could filter down to just my running.
Yeah, this also shows off the filters. Really nice. And I think this is where you will use those loaded and running the most.
Yeah. Good point. I should put loaded it in there as a filter too. So when we go to our next cue, we can see it. Do. And because I'm impatient, I'm just going to go ahead and load my next one, which is Q2. And now those are running.
And then the other thing you might pick up on is that link. And what is that link doing?
It's showing you how close or how much time is left before the link executes, right? So this is obviously a time link because it tells me in nice sentence structure, runs for 40 seconds, then triggers Q3. And Q3 has like its kind of matching or mating link there, showing you that it executes after Q2 has been running for 40 seconds. It's like super clear and straightforward. I love that. That's really nicely done.
And then I don't know that we have an example here, but so for a cue that is executing another cue, so the parent cue will show it beneath it, and the child cue, the one being executed, the link shows above it.
Right.
And so there can only ever be one above a cue.
But there can be
many below
the cue. Got it. And then you can also see, I'm going to scroll past these just because we're only in simulator, so I don't really feel like I got to
pay attention.
Yeah. And B, I'm excited to move on. So Q6 here, we can see it has a trailing cue, like it's a parent cue. And then Q7 actually it is triggered by a cue and then triggers another cue.
Yeah.
And we can see all those, which is pretty sweet as well. And then so to write a link, let me just find one that's not linked already. Looks like I've got a little link here. So I probably pick the child cue, I'm guessing.
Yep.
So I pick the child cue and I can do like a completion link, time link, input link, etc. I'll just do a completion link, which is a little boring, but
it's clear.
It's very easy to do, especially in a show file where I'm not quite sure what all of the positions are and everything. Although I could have seen, right? I say that. I'm like, I didn't want to do a position link because I don't know what position it's going to trigger, but I can totally see that now in that little. I should have done it, and now I feel like a coward. But it was 434 to 360, 36.75. So anywhere in that range
would have worked.
Yeah, and it's so clear that it's right there.
And why don't you add one so we can also show off editing it? Add like a position or a time link so we can.
Oh yeah.
Because how would you edit it, right? It's
good point.
A little different than before, where it showed up on the left hand.
Okay, so I'm gonna put a position link in. And so this is gonna. Oh, I jumped the gun here. So 46 now is linked to 47. 47 is going to trigger after line set 7 reaches some position. It says 0 as the default.
Right.
But we can see that in 46, line set 7 is going from 144 to 40.
So we want to probably change that. So just like you might think, you just can click on it and
now I can enter in whatever I want to. So I can do like 100, say.
And again, like editing the movement, it's not live until you click update, so you can cancel out of it.
Yep.
And if your parent link has a bunch of child links, you can use the arrow keys to move up and down between the links.
Oh, very cool.
And you can edit the link from either the parent or the child. So if you have them,
Oh, look at that. I just clicked on it.
Spread out with lots of cues in the middle.
So a lot of the times I do this as like fake surprise so I can be a good like sidekick. That is actual surprise. I didn't know that you could click on the parent link and edit it that way. That's very cool.
Yeah, so then if you have, Q1 is triggering everything and then you're all the way down in Q5 or 50 or whatever you want.
You can edit it where you're
trying to edit it. Yeah, exactly.
Again, like meet you where you want to be. Super cool. So if I want to restore this cue, is that still in my right click menu? It sure is, and Control R. So restore cue is super handy for folks that haven't seen this before. Not a new feature, but one that's evergreen. So restore cue is a good way to kind of set yourself up to be sitting in Q46. Now Q46 only moves one motor, but it's got a ton of motors that might have to move in order to be sitting there. And it looks like line set 5's got to move because it's supposed to be at 434. It's currently sitting at 36 something or 37 something. And this one's got to move. And so you can to get yourself sitting in the right situation, you can load and go on as many of these as you want. You do have to individually do it. That's actually on purpose so that we know that you
know what you're moving.
You know what you're moving, and you give it a little thought. But anyway, and then I'm gonna jump the gun here and get down to line set. Oh, did I already do line set 7? Nope. Oh, line set 7's. Yeah, I did do line set 7. There we go. All right, and then we'll wait for these guys to finish up.
And you'll notice a lot of this stuff is similar, but some of it has just gotten some new UI tweaking, a little new styling. But a lot of the pop-up windows are still exactly the same. So we didn't change everything on you.
With the exception of like the icons for load, go, stop have changed.
Yeah. The Q-Link picking one's the same.
Yep. Oh, while I'm thinking of it, Q-Links. Q-Links used to be in a status bar. Status bar is totally gone.
Yeah.
So long status bar. It may actually come back because there's a couple of things that I'm kind of missing from status bar land. But Q-Links was always oddly like a checkbox down in the lower left corner to enable or disable Q-Links. So you have all these links that will fire off, cues automatically. Sometimes you don't want that to happen, especially when you're kind of like teching through, or not really teching like tech rehearsal teching, but just kind of dry teching through.
Yep. Or like going out of order and you don't know what's going to happen, or you don't want weird things to happen or whatever.
And so that's now under the cues menu, which makes a lot more sense. So Q-Links enabled is a checkbox there, or a checked menu item there, and you can uncheck that to.
And if you uncheck it, it's clear in the UI that now your links are grayed out.
Now they're all grayed out. Yeah. So cool.
So it's not going to run.
But I'm going to go ahead and run it. Oh, did I run this? Oh, yeah, because I was sitting in. I restored it exactly to be in this queue. that was a bad move. I'm just going to jog that motor somewhere else. or actually, so it's supposed to be going from 144. Let me go over to Jog Screen, turn off my filters. That was line set 07. Line set 07. Boop, boop, boop. I'm just going to reset it to 144. Super handy. Move to position.
Yes. Again, not a new feature, just
right. But super accessible, and
super
then
easy.
Really easy to like find the thing that I was looking for. I deleted out my search term there, which brings everybody back up, but I still have that one selected. All right, so now that's complete. Let's go ahead and try to run that queue again. Because now we're coming from 144 to 40, which means we will pass through our 100.
Mm-hmm.
Do.
It's just exciting watching the progress bar move across the screen.
Yep. And then there we go. And so then it took its cue, and it's on its way. That's very cool.
Yes.
All right. So I think that gets us through much of what we want to talk about. Let's just check our list, see what else do we want to talk about in queue mode. We didn't talk about dynamic spikes.
Oh.
Jesus, Mary and Joseph.
And the other thing to go along with them, the really, really, really exciting thing.
Which one?
I don't think it's on this list.
Okay. All right, it's not on the list.
That one.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, that is super exciting.
I'm very excited for that one.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
It is on the list.
Oh, it's just later.
Just later.
All right.
Just excited for it.
Yeah, we're just excited.
But dynamic spikes.
Dynamic spikes. We'll do dynamic spikes. All right, I'm going to stop this because I don't have time. I'm getting old watching that queue. All right, let's go ahead and to show off dynamic spikes, I think that
Turntable probably is makes the most sense.
All right.
I think.
I'm with you.
Easiest to understand.
So I got a new show file that gives us back to ground zero. Machine library. Boop, boop, boop. This trackpad's really giving me guff. I keep like right clicking when I mean to not right click.
Yep, never mind.
Were you worried that the turntable size wasn't gonna change?
No, I just glanced over at OBS and Fuji is unhappy.
Oh no, what's wrong with Fuji? Oh, it is unhappy. Well, that's all right.
Battery?
We're screencasting at the moment anyway. So maybe it's overheating. Fuji.
No, it's showing the battery thing, I think. It should be plugged in. It should be fine.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah. Interesting.
We might not cut back to video then.
Yeah, we made it. We may be screencasting for the rest of this podcast. All right. All right, so I'm just going to get this going here. All right, so we got a revolver in there. Back up a little bit. Oh, no, I did want to add a new queue. But I'm just going to call this Q1. And we'll add another Q2 and another Q3 just for giggles. And I'm going to drop in the revolver here. So everyone knows spiky spikes. I'm going to put the revolver in all these queues. I could have duplicated the Q too, I guess.
Control D is
Q duplicate?
Yep.
All right. So for my target, I can always enter in if I wanted to go 90 degrees, I could go 90 degrees, right?
Right.
And update, and that
Now
would
you're
be a
going
90
90.
queue. And if I wanted to go another 90 degrees, the old way was I'd have to set a new target for 180 degrees because I have to have 90 to it.
And actually, can we just derail the train for a second?
Yeah.
Can we back up to, so about doing that math,
Yep.
you can do that math right in the target position.
Oh, yes, you're totally right.
I totally forgot to add this to the list.
Yes. So if we were at 90, say, so let's just do that. So we're at 90 and we're like, we want to go 90 past that. You can now do plus 90, right?
Yeah.
And that goes to 180.
And you can also do subtraction. And it works for most places that you're going to want it.
That's pretty cool. I mean, not pretty cool. It
is very cool, yes.
Yeah. But even cooler,
Yes, but nah. Back to dynamic spikes, though.
So spikes were always kind of useless on turntables because unless you were only ever going to turn one rotation totally, it just wasn't useful, right? Because you're trying to describe everything in one 360-degree circle, but you maybe always want to run forward. So now if we add a spike, there's a few different spiky types that you get. I'm just going to call this 90 clockwise to remind myself what it is. So if I want to write a spike now that goes 90 degrees just every time I run it, from the type of spike,
yeah.
I can choose simple, which is just the old spike.
That you know and love.
Increment,
which is the first new dynamic spike, which is just go another block. Whatever.
From your current position.
Yep.
Right? Which might be cool, except if you were starting from 5 degrees and you wanted to go to 90, you don't want to just add 90 degrees. You want to hit the next 90 increments.
Right, because with the increment one, you would end up at 95, which would be too far.
Nearest multiple, which we're not going to show just yet, but that would just say like
shortest distance to position.
Yep. And then if, in my case, I want to always go clockwise. So I want the nearest forward multiple. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to punch in a factor of 90. And we can talk about this in a second about why this works. But I'm going to select that and say, let me get my Q runner out again. So now if I load this up, you can see it's going to go 90 degrees from where it is now. So I'm just going to go ahead and run it. And now here's the really magical thing. If I want to, I can just rerun this queue and it'll go another 90. So if I load it up, it's now going to go 90 more degrees.
Same queue.
Same queue. Haven't touched anything. And you could start from anywhere. Right, so I could jog this thing around. So if I go to jog mode, and I can just jog this like a little bit. Oh, I got to select it. Select it, jog a little bit forward, right? And now,
trying to run that queue will take you to the next multiple of 90.
Which is up there, right? So if you just wanted to like shift 90 degrees every time you run.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Yes.
But then the next one we should show off is the same type of spike, so still just the nearest multiple. Or you know what? I'm going to say that that other one was just like plus 90 clockwise as a name.
Right.
So this one is really, now I really want to go to
90 every time. Well, to a, yes.
Right, but so I'm going to go nearest forward multiple again. But this time for my factor, I'm going to punch in my factor as 360, which basically means like I want this all to be based on a 360-degree rotation. But I always want to go,
sticky
I hit
key.
something. I got a sticky key on my keyboard. Okay. But I want to offset 90 degrees. So from the last 360-degree increment. So if I'm 2 rotations in and I'm at whatever
712.
Yeah,
no, it's not 2 rotations.
But yeah, 720 or I'm at 845. It doesn't really matter. I just want the computer to figure out like go forward till you hit the next 90 based on a 0 to 360 queue. So I'm starting from a position of 270. Right. And in old Spikemark land, if I told it to go to 90, it would go in reverse.
Right. All
back
the way
around
back
3/4
to
of a
90.
revolution. Yeah. But not now.
But
now it's going to go forward basically 180 degrees to get to the next instance
of 90.
Of 90, which is
720 plus 90. That's not though, because we haven't made it. It's 360 plus 90.
Right.
450. Final answer.
You did it. That was better than I wasn't even going to try to do the math. I was just going to like explain it in words. And now if I load that cue again, it will go all the way around the turntable. It'll go 360 again to get back to that place. Because we've told it we want the next forward instance of this.
Yeah.
Right.
And as the classroom exercise, I'll let you do that math this time.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it there prematurely. Just trust us. It was going to get there.
Right.
We'd already proven it. But now let's show off a different kind of spike. So let's do cue number 4, and we're just going to go nearest. So this time, I'm going to add another dynamic spike to it. And I'm going to call this one near. I'm just going to call it nearest. And for this one, we'll just do nearest multiple, and we'll set up our factor the same way, 360 and 90, and update. And so now it should basically do the same thing, right? It should go to the same spot that it was trying to get to.
But this time, now what it's going to try to do, what it's going to do is it's going to determine whether going forward or clockwise is the fastest direction or going reverse / counterclockwise is the fastest direction.
And if I reload it, it won't move at all because
Right.
it's already there. It's already at the nearest multiple or nearest forward instance of 90. So,
Right.
But to your point, since it will now pick a direction to go, if I select it,
Yep.
still got to select it, turns out. So if I go a little bit past it and I rerun that cue, it will go back. Right?
But if you're past the halfway point there, it goes forward, like you saw the first time.
Right. And if I go a little bit reverse of it,
That was an easier way to show it off.
and I reload that cue, it'll go back to it. So we're going to and what we're able to do is tell it we want to go to the 90, like quote unquote the 90, but we're at position like 810.
Right.
And so Spikemark's doing the thing that you kind of have always wanted it to do. So another thing that this allows us to do is that we can say target a speed of target a position of 4,000, which we're limited to 1440 just because that's what our forward position is at the moment. And I can load that cue. Actually, I do want to let it go a little further though. Let's go to 40,000 and minus 40,000 on those values just so we can open this back up. So target this to go to 4,000 or 40,000 or whatever. I don't really care. I'm just going to set it off running. And this scenario comes up from time to time for folks where it's like, I want to let the turntable run. I don't really know how far it's going to get, but when the actor hits their line, I want to hit the next 90.
Right.
And so in this case, you can do either thing. You can either go to the like a plus 90, so it's just going to go to the next nearest like 90-degree quarter of the turntable, or you can go to the next like 90 position based on a 0
Right.
as your datum. So I'm just going to pick the next nearest. I'll wait till it goes around. And here it's just going to land on the nearest 90-degree multiple.
Right.
And I can start it up again.
And show that it's not. It'll go to the 90.
To the 90.
Nearest 90.
Yes.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. And I'll wait for it to pass. And somebody's doing some stuff on stage, and then I load up my cue, and I hit run. And you can see that it's going to now come back around and hit the 90 based on a 0 to 90.
Yep.
Because in this case, I guess I didn't say this explicitly, but 0 was actually originally stage left, which is kind of odd. I should have rotated the turntable around to make 0, downstage, because that would have been more human, but it didn't. And so now it's going to slow down and hit that spike. So it's hit the nearest 90-degree instance, even though the position was like 1890.
Right. Which is really cool.
Which is super, super cool, and I think makes turntable positioning so much better.
Yeah.
So.
And you wrote a lot of this feature.
I did several times, and then you.
This one, so it seems so simple and straightforward, but
it was
just a little bit not.
It was a little bit not. Like, it was deceptively. I mean, sometimes you get into those instances where you're like, oh yeah, this is pretty easy, because you think like it's not that hard. I mean, many of our customers have said this to us over the years. Like, it shouldn't be that hard. Just write like turntable cues, you know.
Yeah, but
right. And so we started off with like. Just doing some very simple math, like to get the next increment stuff.
Right.
I think that, I wrote all that and like figured out the architecture for how we wanted to handle dynamic spikes, et cetera. But then you used it for, I don't know, an hour, and you're like, I don't think this really works.
I also had a very specific use case in mind as I was testing it,
Right.
which was actually turns out pretty helpful for
It was very
figuring this
helpful.
out. But yeah, it took us, I don't know, 3 days, 4 days?
It took us 3 days after that, yeah.
Where it was like,
We
each
thought
day,
we had it.
we nailed it.
Yeah, we're like, in the morning we'd be scratching our heads. We worked together on it. We're like, this is it. This is the formula we want. And then by the next morning, we're like, wait a second, no, that doesn't work in this situation. Wait, no. But the key was really dividing it up into these 3 different variables. So you've got your, the factor and the offset,
right,
and then the value,
right,
and value giving you the factor and offset. So we started off really with just factor, because it was like, you just go to the next multiple. But a lot of times you don't really want just the multiple. So having this idea of a factor where you set up like, what's my basis? What am I calling like unit? In this case, like for turntables, it might be 360. If you're moving. Like if you're raising an LED wall that's being built in like 48-inch segments, it could be 48 inches is your factor, but then your offset. And you don't always need the offset, and you don't always need the factor, but you can play with those 3 variables to
do some really powerful things.
Very powerful stuff. Yeah, but like you said, it was pretty funny, because it was like kind of an Abbott and Costello routine where we were just like every morning we're like, we did it. This is perfect. Ship it. And then by the next morning I'm like, no, that doesn't work if you go reverse or whatever it was. Yeah. But I think it's really cool, and it's a thing that we've been it's an itch we've been trying to scratch for years. Literally.
Yeah.
Because we looked also like at doing relative positioning a while back, and I think that we were never happy with our implementation, and so we didn't release it.
Right.
And I think this looks
this
really
is
good.
Better,
way
than
better.
what we had previously. Yeah.
And so the idea, I guess we kind of skipped over the elevator pitch, but the idea with a dynamic spike is that, a regular spike, you explicitly define the value for it, but in a dynamic spike, it's calculated. The value is calculated at runtime based on the current position of the motor and other coefficients that you enter.
Right.
And so it will dynamically change based on the position of the motor when the cue is loaded.
Yeah.
And that's pretty sick, because then you can really, you can
do crazy stuff like run an entire turntable show with just one cue.
Just one cue, yeah.
Without changing anything.
Yeah. Yep. And then the way you mix and match those, like the nearest forward, the nearest reverse, those can set you up for some pretty interesting things.
Right. Because we didn't show it, but there's a reverse one that exact behaves the same way as the forward one.
As the forward one, but oddly in reverse.
With a name like that, who would have ever guessed?
Who would have guessed? So I don't know I think this is the final UI for shipping Spikemark 5. When you guys see Spikemark 5, it's going to have this UI. I'm still curious. Like, I think there's we basically have exposed the 3 components there: value, factor, and offset. Oh, and then we should have mentioned that. I should have mentioned that you did a nice job polishing up this UI so that the things that you can edit for that type of spike are editable. The things that you can't edit are grayed out. So like if you're doing a simple spike, which is what the little equal sign means, and if I click on that, it expands out to the name, right? You can edit the value, because that's the point of a simple spike, and you can't edit factor and offset, because they don't mean anything for simple spikes.
Right.
And if I similarly, like if I do increment, I can edit the offset because the increment basically doesn't have a factor. It just has an offset.
Just go this much more. Yep.
And so you can't edit value or factor, but you can edit the offset. And then for any of the multiple ones, you can edit factor and offset, but not value because value is going to be
calculated. Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, pretty cool stuff. But I think we're now to one of the most exciting things, and the thing that you have single-handedly implemented, which is another long-standing feature request, right?
Yes. For a long time, people have wanted to be able to execute cues in Spikemark from not Spikemark.
Right. They're like, we love Spikemark almost.
Yeah. I just now don't want to use it.
I'd just really rather not use it.
So with Spikemark 5, we now have the ability to trigger Spikemark over OSC, via OSC.
Which is super cool.
So now you can control it with QLab.
Yeah.
And then we have a little demo here set up.
Yeah.
And if we want to show that off, I think that'd be pretty cool.
I think we should totally do it. So we've got some basic cues written here.
Yeah, so now we can just...
So show me, set me through. What do I need to set up in Spikemark to be able to make it like
So it's pretty simple in Spikemark. You just, under the show control, there's had another thought. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
There is
OSC input
now
trigger.
OSC input trigger. And so there are 2 port numbers to set.
Okay.
There is the listen port, and this is the port Spikemark is listening for messages on. By default, it's that one.
Okay.
And then there's also a response port, and this is the port that Spikemark will send messages back out on. So not only can you run queues and stuff, but you can actually also edit some runtime queue properties. And if you want to get a response back from that, this is the port.
Okay.
And so then it's just a simple enable button.
So I hit the enable.
Yep.
And it shows me
get our little check. And now Spikemark is listening.
All right. And do I have to keep this window open? I can close it?
Now you can close it.
Okay.
And then so if we switch over to the Mac, so you can see here, now we are running QLab, and I have created, so in the network patch, I set it up. So this is our Spikemark computer, and that's what I'll be sending it to.
Yep.
And then I have written this simple Q1 go. And actually, if I then switch over to the split screen.
Oh, nice. We can see both.
So when I run this queue.
And I'm not touching Spikemark.
Woo! You can see.
And it's running.
It is running.
Running Q1. So we got that over OSC. So from a Mac, running QLab over the network, boom.
Done.
And we have hold to run turned off right now, but
yes,
if you have it enabled, it will respect hold to run.
Right.
So that should you not, which would mean that like the automation operator has to be actually physically holding down,
right,
and authorizing the motion to happen. But Spikemark allows you to configure that either to do that or to not do that.
Right. And then we can also do, I just wrote it, but I don't remember all of these. I believe it is Q1/stop to
stop Q1.
To stop Q1.
And there it goes. Boom.
And so,
which stopped it prematurely. Otherwise, it would just run to completion, right?
Right, because if you remember, our Q1 was going to like
40,000
or something. But then you can also do things like we could change the ramp time of the queue or the total time of the queue or change the specific position that a movement was going to or change the speed of a movement.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's very cool.
Change the offset and the factor.
So could you change spikes. Do you have something that you're going to do then to show that?
I did not have one off the top of my head, but.
Could we do one,
yeah,
do you think?
Yeah.
If I put you on the spot? So,
yeah.
So for Q2, it's got a dynamic spike that has an offset of 90.
Q2, yeah.
Yeah.
So we want to.
Do you want the Q number or do you want the spike number?
There are several ways to do it. I think the Q number and motor name are the easiest.
Okay.
Or they make the most sense, I think.
Okay, so for Q2, Revolver space V2, and spaces have to be underscores, right?
Yeah, and we also have this whole new great documentation website that we'll touch on a little bit later too, but that has all of this laid out in a easier to follow. So we want to change the Q, and we want to change Q2.
Yep.
And then we want to edit the movement of the motor.
Revolver V2, which has got a capital R.
V and 2. And then we want to change its spike.
Yep.
Offset.
Yep.
To
180 from 90.
180. Okay. And then if we click go here, and then over in Spikemark.
And I can see that the offset's already been changed
to 180.
Yep.
Yeah. And
so can we run Q2?
We can run Q2. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I don't know why I guess I could run Q2 too. But why would I now?
Right. Now just from QLab. And the Q ones are simple. It's just Q/number/go. And then Q2.
Oh,
and there
my
it went.
God. That's so cool.
Yeah. And also, I don't know if I have it open in QLab still. But
yeah, and I kind of screwed you a little bit too because I gave you the offset, but I should have changed the factor too to 360. But anyway,
you get the point.
You get the point. Yes, exactly. So that means also while you're running a queue, if you're running that 40,000 queue and you wanted to change something dynamically on the fly based on anything else, right? You could change your target position for that queue, which is sweet.
Right. And then just to point it out real quick, so that response stuff that we were talking about when we were configuring Spikemark, these are those messages that it's sending back in this window here. You can see that.
Oh, nice.
The Spikemark reply, and then, because you can also query information about the spike, like what position are you going to?
Okay.
And then you can also see that.
Very cool.
Yeah. So it's been a long requested feature that
and you've done a great job. It's so powerful that you can both edit and run and stop and all those things all through OSC, which is pretty great. What other things do we want to touch on?
I think you've always been able to export motors.
Oh, yeah.
But now you can export multiple motors all at once, and you can also export any kind of stagehand.
Oh, yeah. So FXs and whatever.
I mean, FXs was really OSCs, the one I was looking for. But
yeah, totally. But so
I enabled it for all.
If I now move over to Jog Screen, although you can certainly do this from the Q screen too. I just find the Jog Screen is a little bit easier because you can see, I like seeing the cards. I don't know why. But I can grab, using multi-select, so I'm holding down the control key. I'm grabbing a bunch of these things. I'm going to just export all my stagehands. And I can now select, my desktop. I'm going to go ahead and make a new folder. More exports. And it tells me I exported 7 of them. Cool. So if I started a new show file and I'd so this is great when you've got a theater, right? And you have a bunch of permanently installed machines, but you don't necessarily want to clutter up your show file with every machine in the theater.
Especially the ones you're not using for a show.
That's what I mean, right? But I'm not using half of these line sets, right?
Yeah.
So if you had just a directory that had all of your line sets in them, you could now import your stagehands and go to your, did I put that in? Where did I put that?
I think in your
it was in
app profile thing.
Yeah, I didn't get it on my desktop, but on my desktop I got another set of them. So let me just do that. Oh, no, I only have one there. Oh, no.
I think if you just do your name, local disk C, users,
users. Oh God, this is horrible.
I think there it is.
More exports. There we go. So it's just in my home directory. All right. Woo! And I navigated the file system. So if I pick like 2 or 3 of these, or 4 in this case, but you could imagine I could have like 30, 40, 50 of these. And I'm like, oh, I just want maybe I only want Cloud 1 and line set 31 and 32. And that's it. That's all. It's a small show that I'm doing. Boom. And they just come in. So you've always been able to, like you said, always been able to import and export
single motors.
Single motors. But the idea now that you can shift select and do multiple ones, it's just a kind of quality of life.
Yeah. And especially too for FXs. So like if you have an effect that has like air brakes or something and you're always using an FX, you can now export that and easily import it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So last thing I think we should probably just touch on is, and actually, since you got Wi-Fi, do you want to switch back to you and show off the dock site?
Sure.
So another really cool thing that the document or the support team has come up with is this new documentation site. So if you go to docs.creativeconnors.com, you can see our, we'll switch over here. Yeah. So here's our new little support center at docs.creativeconnors.com. And you can see the Spikemark documentation with the quick start tutorial. And they're starting to fill in the rest of the Spikemark 5 documentation. But feel free to go ahead and
check it out,
read through it. Let us know what you think. And you can see a lot of the things that we've been talking about today are already documented in there. Oh yeah, all the OSC
input
stuff
trigger
that you've documented as well.
Yeah, well, I'm going to show off the stuff I did.
Yeah, that's very nice though.
But I was really just trying to get to all the various commands. There's a bunch of them, and they're all laid out.
But that whole documentation site, so bit by bit, we're going to be moving away from our individual PDFs and into this documentation site, which I think should be really great for folks to be able to just have one-stop shopping to find what you need. And then having the interlinks between hey, when we're talking about setting limit switches and limit positions, being able to jump right to a specific machine limit switch and you can stagehand.
Search for things like all the new Spike stuff we were just talking about.
Right. Yeah. The search across all of our documentation is pretty great. So docs.creativeconnors.com. I wanted to just point that out. And then I think the last thing I just want to talk about is when is this all live, right? So, this is all still kind of pre-release. We have release candidates, and we have several customers using this stuff out in the wild. But then come September, the idea is September, maybe October, depending on when we button things up. Mm-hmm. But this fall, for sure, Spikemark 5 is going to be live for everyone.
Yeah.
And as ever, it is free.
Woohoo.
Woohoo. So you get all this for the grand big price of nothing.
That's pretty impressive.
It's pretty great. And simulator, of course, works as ever.
Right.
So
you don't even need motors.
Yeah, if you don't have motors, but you just want to start playing around with this stuff, especially some of the really cool OSC integration, playing around with integrating with QLab or other OSC sources. It's pretty great. We didn't mention, but there's also a pretty nifty UDP output.
Oh, I had that thought when we were, when I started talking about the OSC input triggers. That's what that was. But there's a new generic UDP output, which allows you, and this is also documented on the new site, allows you to choose what you want to output.
Yeah, so here's the pattern, right? So you can type in different patterns, which are all documented on the site. So rather than just being locked into what we decide is the UDP output to describe motor position on the network, you can choose from, I don't know how many.
Name, position, which is the simulated position, which is what we normally do, which is best for video.
Right.
Actual position, which is real encoder position. The desired position when you're running a queue. The speed, the desired speed.
Yeah, so I could put in desired speed. Is that underscored or?
Yeah, underscored.
Yeah, so desired speed. And I could put whatever, like a pipe.
Curly brackets, not square brackets.
Not square brackets.
I like the curly brackets.
All right. You win this round. Yeah. So you can basically, everything that's inside of the curly brackets gets replaced with the actual data, and then everything that's not in curly brackets gets sent as just
characters.
Literal strings, right?
Yep.
So you can describe your own format. So whatever device is listening for our motor position, you can sculpt the data however you need it.
Yeah.
Which is pretty fantastic.
Right. And it's kind of like Watch Out, but just now configurable.
Yeah.
To however you want it.
Yeah. So pretty dope.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, I think that was, we've blathered on a good while, right? We're
I think so.
I don't know, hour and a half or something in.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was great. And I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed like this quick look at Spikemark 5. And again, this isn't like meant to be the training for it. There'll be actual training videos, but this is really more of just like us having fun and showing it off and letting you see it. So our webcam is dying. Thanks, Fuji. Anyway, thanks so much for joining us. Please do let us know if you enjoy this kind of content and if you'd like to see more. Obviously not always in like over an hour format, but shorter clips, kind of giving you some inside scoop. We work on encouragement, so any of that you can grant would be most appreciated. All right. Thanks, everyone.